welcome back. We have another episode today. Um, I know that we had spoken last time about running the mystery boxes, right? We kind of floated the idea of running the mystery boxes for Black Friday. Um, so Shawn and I actually ended up doing it and prepped, got it ready just in time for a little bit after Black Friday. It was like the Wednesday after Thanksgiving. So I figured we would kind of run through how that went because there's some funny stories that we have on our end. And I guess ultimately, I would say it's a success. A lot of people were able to, get those items discounted and essentially brand new. Like I had stated on the website, and I tried to state over on TikTok and here, these were returns going all the way back to the start of the brand. So Shawn and I hadn't really had a system for dealing with returns, and a lot of our returns since the beginning had been like size exchanges. So these are items that were just tried on, or a small percentage of them had minor defect in, maybe there was a pull in the stitching, or a small spot on some of the garments. So that's why they were so heavily discounted. And I figure instead of like just having them sit in the warehouse, we could, if people wanted to buy at a discount in that way, we could definitely offer them. So we end up, prepping, doing all the prep work. Shawn and I were kind of scrambling there for a little bit, trying to figure out like how can we at least categorize them, categorize the items so that people had some idea of what they were getting, because there are people who might be a size large in, say, a t-shirt, but are a size medium in a hoodie. So we wanted to kind of narrow it down for people so they had a better idea of what exactly was in the mystery box. So we tried to keep it to either like 2 or 3 items and of the same, I guess, subcategory of garment. We get to the launch, right? As is the course for any launch, I feel like I'm scrambling to get last minute details up on the website and ready to go. Anyway, we launch. Shawn and I are sitting there doing our normal monitoring the support inbox, just waiting for either address changes or any issues that might come up. And in like 20 seconds, some of the sizes are sold out on the website. Now, the amount of volume that we had available for these mystery boxes was not anything crazy, right? Like I said, these were returns over the course of the brand. And I think because of that, people became upset that we had run out so fast. So Shawn's sitting there monitoring the inbox, and there's some exchanges coming across with some pretty like choice words. And I just want to clarify for anybody that was upset about how the mystery boxes were sold and how fast they sold out. I didn't really know what to expect, and it's not like we did a production run for this sort of release. So we were just working with what we have. It was never my intent to make it so scarce that people were getting cart jacked and stuff. I understand that people were getting cart jacked. I'm sorry. It's I know it's a frustrating feeling to be putting in your card information and then have the item sell out. But yeah, I mean, I think overall it went smooth.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like the number one goal was to clear out some of this stuff from the warehouse because space is limited now, especially with more of the product offerings we have in the warehouse and like inventory we have. So they were just 2 massive boxes that were just taking up a lot of room.
When he says boxes, these are not like small foldable boxes. They're called Gaylord boxes, and they're what you put on a pallet and you can fill them up. They're huge.
Yeah, like it's a ton of stuff. So those are just taking up space, and we needed to figure out the best way to get rid of them. And we were like, you know, how can we do this to where these are like perfectly good products to like give back to you guys, but in a way that like we at least, you know, cover some of the costs of like practically a brand new garment. And this seemed like the best way to do it. And then like looking back on it, I never really thought about like how much of each item we had, because like at that point you're just kind of scrambling to make sure everything's in order before the release. You know, Mark's worrying about the website, making sure the inventory numbers are correct.
There's also something we couldn't do anything about. It's not like we had a production for it, you know?
Yeah, exactly. So when it happened, we were just kind of like, like, okay, you know, I think my first initial reaction was like, I didn't think people would be like actually upset or like mad about it. You know, I understand frustration where it's like you don't get the product you're looking for at like a good deal. Like, yeah, I've been there before, but just generally like pretty mad about it. So that was a little bit surprising. But again, like maybe next time we just make it more clear that like, look, this is not like a production. This isn't a full production run. These are returns. Like there's very limited numbers. Some items might have more than others. Like it all depends on what the customer has returned. Mm-hmm. So we tried to convey that in the emails, and ultimately I think people understood, like once we totally like laid it all out for them, and they're very understanding, which is nice that you can kind of like work through it and explain the situation. So that there's always a little bit of good that comes out of that. But yeah, overall, I think it was like a success. And I think now we know next time if we do something similar, like there are different things that we can do to make sure like people are more aware. There's probably a better way to ensure that if you ordered something from like the t-shirt mystery box and you already have a t-shirt, it would exclude whatever t-shirt you had or something along those lines. But this first time, like, we didn't really know what to expect. It's kind of like the first drop you ever have. You never really know what to expect, and then each one becomes more seamless.
Yeah. That was kind of going to be what I touched on next, is just general improvements. Like Shawn said, I guess worst case scenario from our perspective would be to have a customer receive an item that they already have. And because we were just going about this sort of last minute around like Black Friday and everything, there was no system in place to ensure that duplicates weren't going to be sent out. I think a small portion of people did receive duplicates.
I've only gotten one email.
Okay, so generally good. But for next time, there is no easy or quick application solution that I'm aware of to enable this kind of mystery box while taking in customer data and digesting and then funneling an item that they don't have into the order. I think that's going to have to be something that we're going to have to shop out to programmers and kind of create a custom application to handle that kind of order flow, which isn't an issue because it brings me to my next point. I think that going forward, we should have a couple of these mystery box type releases throughout the year because, like Shawn said, I mean, the returns ultimately end up just kind of sitting in their little corner of the warehouse and nothing's really gets done to them. We're not going to sell a returned item at full retail value. One, because it's most of the time it's open bag. Two, it's probably been tried on. And at the end of the day, you know, if you're buying something at that retail value, we want you to have the full experience. Now, I think that if we had kind of maybe a quarterly mystery box, or maybe we rename it to something else where we kind of make it more readily available 4 times a year or so, that we can refine the process faster, because only doing it once a year, you really only have one shot at success. And I would consider this most recent one a success, but it was semi-stressful and a huge learning experience. So ultimately moving forward, I think it's just refine the process and then maybe do more of them, because practice is ultimately going to make perfect. Outside of the building a custom application, I don't really see that much that needs to change from like a website perspective, just like sorting items essentially.
Yeah, it was kind of like one of those things which I don't think we've necessarily experienced in a while because, you know, after doing so many of the drops, we've learned a ton and made a ton of mistakes. But so far, like recently, the past few drops have been pretty good. Like small mistakes, but nothing that kind of like gives you like a weird pit in your stomach. Like, did I really mess this up?
Yeah.
And it was kind of like, oh God, like people are mad. Like, number one rule, you don't want to upset the customer. So we're both kind of sitting there reading a few emails, and we're kind of quiet, and we're just like, was this a bad? I think Marcus was like, was this a bad idea? Like, did we make sure this was foolproof? And like, and after talking about it and like talking to the customers, and ultimately, you know, everything was good. It was fine, but there was a moment there where it just kind of didn't feel great, and it really like solidifies the fact that before these releases, you really try to think of all these things that could go wrong. But it's very hard if you've done a release that you've never done before in the past, and it's like a trial by fire thing, which is it's good and bad. Like you have to do it, but at the same time, there's going to be moments where you're like, oh shit, like did this go poorly or did this go wrong? So
Yeah, Shawn talks about that kind of weird pit in your stomach feeling. There's a couple instances throughout the course of the business so far that I remember to this day. We had the original Run Club hoodie release last December, essentially almost 365 days ago from today. And we are packing orders after being live on the website, and we get to the last green, forest green, like I'm wearing, small Run Club hoodie, and we pack it, and it's within the first day of packing, and I'm like, okay, that's weird. And then I run into a label that has the green, small, forest green Run Club hoodie, and I'm like, oh shit, like we oversold this product. So then, you know, a small sliver of panic ensues in me trying to run through mentally like, okay, well, how many did we oversell? Because I don't know. We still have, you know, these huge stacks of labels to go through before we're even close to knowing how many we sold. And ultimately, over the course of the next 3 days, we get everything shipped out, and it ended up being, I think, 48 or 51 hoodies that were oversold. Now, I guess technically it's not the end of the world, right? Like it shows on the good side, it shows that there's demand for the product. On the bad side, it's now you have to be conscious of how you're going to deal with it. So the way I went about it was I emailed all of those people and I said, listen, you know, this is 100% my mistake. I am going to refund you the order. And on top of it, we are going to go back into production on these hoodies, but it's going to be a couple months. However, whenever they do come back, I'm just going to send you one for free. Because at the end of the day, you know, as I've said since the very beginning, you know, I just want the customer to be happy. And I felt that that was the, you know, most, or that was probably the best way that I could go about it. I think that's also too the first time Shawn kind of saw like the customer service side of the business, because at this point he wasn't really handling any of the customer service emails or anything. So it was like kind of a teaching moment for me, because, you know, I was kind of in a position to show him that this is the way I want to go forward in making sure that the customer is taken care of.
yeah, at that point, like that was what, December? So like I was not with the brand. Like I would help out on drops, and that was pretty much it, because at that point I was still debating if I wanted to go to law school. So I remember this happening, and like looking back on it now, I realize how big of a deal it is, and especially like for Marcus because it's his brand. But like at the time, when you're not doing stuff with the brand every single day and like you don't work there, it's hard to understand that. So it was kind of like this, okay, what do we do? Like, what's the number one concern? And then like he would be like, it's the customer. Like, you don't want the customer to be unhappy because they thought they got a hoodie, but then next thing you know, they didn't, and they just get their money back and they walk away with nothing. So I think like ultimately what he did serve like a pretty good lesson for me, because I mean it's pretty similar to how we handle customer service to this date, which is, while many brands probably would think that was unnecessary, you didn't have to go that far. It's like one of those things where it's worth, the customer, you guys being happy, and also like, okay, if something goes wrong, we're not going to be like hung out to dry. We always try to like at least make it better, maybe give you something that we don't like, that might not have been in stock, but we do have in stock. So it was just like a huge learning moment. And I remember
Mom not understanding. She's like, okay, just refund it, and then that's the end of it. I'm like, what? No. I mean, like, I think the way I would think about it is like the general psyche of people spending money and taking a chance on a smaller brand in the beginning is like they're almost going into these purchases expecting to be let down by either the customer service or the shipping time or the touch points that the customer has with the brand. And from the very beginning, I took the mindset of like, if I want to build a global brand and I want a brand that lasts and has staying power, you need to do right by your customers all the time, because ultimately they're the ones that took the chance in the beginning. And so being able to show that to Shawn was good, because now he's generally dealing with all of the customer service emails. Like, stuff very rarely gets escalated up to me, but he's kind of just working off of the framework that he saw me working off of back when I could handle doing both. So yeah, I mean, now he has kind of full discretion on what to do on a case-by-case basis. And outside of that, I think it's worked really well. I think a lot of people are happy. And even in instances where, customers could be unhappy, we do try to end up turning it around and doing right.
I think it's actually like makes my job easier too, because like it's harder to let a customer down than it is to go the extra mile and like make things right, because not only do you like, you can fix this, there's always a solution, but if I had to be like, no, like this is it, I'm sorry, like that it is what it is, like that's our policy, I would have a tough time just probably getting ripped apart in emails every single day. Like, it's easier for me to be like, all right, let's find a solution. And a lot of the times these emails, I'm like, okay, like I suggest an idea and I'll be like, how does this sound? Like, would you be okay with this? Please let me know if like you would want to do something else, because we can make it work. It's not like, it's not bureaucratic where it's like I have to get all these permissions to like be able to, do something to make the situation right. Like, at the end of the day, I know as long as Marcus knows that the customer's happy, that's all that really matters.
Yeah. I think, and we're saying that now at the size that we're at. I think as we continue to scale and grow, there will need to be probably collars put on some of that for fringe cases. But still, I mean, like, you look at some of the great companies out there, and the one that always pops into my mind is Costco, like, just super customer centric. I mean, the CEO in an email, literally, when one of their employees asked or I don't know if it was an employee or like a board member asked about raising the price of hot dogs past $1.50. He literally said he would kill them if he did so in an email. And you look at that and like that's somebody that's so headstrong on making sure that the customer knows exactly what they're getting and that the standard of care is even across all stores, that like those are the businesses I look up to, and obviously have incredible staying power. I don't know anybody that shops at Costco that has really had a negative experience or been upset with their membership. You're literally paying money, I think yearly, to be able to shop at a store, and it's just like their care and their quality of care in their own name brand Kirkland products and the products that they offer is so good that you always leave with a good taste in your mouth. So I don't know. I mean, that's just kind of where the idea around customer service came from. But I don't know if what is working for us today is going to work for us if we scale, 10x.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of like, it's going to have to be a fluid, ever-changing system, which is okay. And at some point, I'm sure we'll have to consult with people smarter than us and who have run bigger brands to figure out what they do. Because, I mean, I feel like we're just kind of, some days we're just like, meh, we could try this and see what happens. And sometimes it goes well, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like, it's easier to handle a small group of problems, like in the beginning. And like, even as we've grown now, like we've had to, make some changes because like, it's just not feasible as you continue to grow and as you have so many of these requests. At the end of the day, like, if we were to do something and just be losing money, then like you can't do that. You can't just lose like money. Yeah. Like, business has to stay in business. So there will always be some sort of adapting and, trying to make it right, but in a different way that, doesn't hurt the business, which is a weird balance, but I think that's all part of it. And like Marcus said, like, I'm sure there's so many business people who have done this sort of thing and gone through these sort of issues. So it's like talking to those people and, at least maybe getting some idea before, you run into it and you're just scrambling, trying to figure out the best way to approach it.
Yeah. Shawn's actually coming up, I think, on a year at the business full time, which I find interesting because of my 1 year of full self-employment was in August. I don't know when Shawn's was, or maybe it hasn't even come up yet.
I think it was maybe January.
Yeah. But I find it interesting, right? Because it's like, on one hand, I don't ever really like reflect in this way, but it's 1 year of being completely self-sufficient. Like, you are essentially eating what you kill and, keeping yourself afloat in New York City day in and day out for an entire year. It's something that I'm extremely proud of and, hopefully continues the rest of my life. But, for Shawn to have ultimately given up going to law school and then being able to support himself as well. And I think, one of the perks of being self-employed in this way is that you almost feel like unshackled in a way. Like, you have so much flexibility in how things are done as long as they get done. As long as they get done, and there are days where there are really long days and it's a grind. But I think the benefit or the freedom outweighs like a lot of that grind and a bit of uncertainty at times.
Yeah, like it's nice to know that like Marcus and I are very similar people. So like, as long as the work gets done and like I don't have to be at my computer making sure my Slack light is green, like making sure that he knows I'm online. One, because I'm in the other room, so like if I'm not there, then clearly I'm not online. And like two, it's just as long as I'm not actually slacking, then it doesn't matter. As long as the work gets done, as long as I can do the work in the early morning, I can do the work at night, I can do the work while I'm watching football, I can do the work. It doesn't matter as long as I'm doing it well and as long as it's getting done. And it's just a very nice feeling to obviously you. I almost you want to do very well for the brand, or I want to do very well for the brand. One, because I believe in the brand, obviously, and two, it's my brother's brand, so there's a little bit of an added pressure, which is a good thing. It's not like a bad pressure. It's more of a if we do this all in, who knows how big this can get? Who knows what the future can hold? And it's a very exciting thing to have with somebody who's related to you, who is your blood. So I don't know. It's been weird, especially coming from working in
So rigid.
corporate America, and it's very much these are your bosses, and those bosses have bosses, and where I worked, I loved it, but it's a totally different atmosphere. I'm at a cubicle. I'm at it's different, but this way is it's very fun.
Yeah. I mean, I think especially with the way we're training and the running and everything, it's very advantageous to be able to work in the morning, for a huge chunk of time, and then midday you want to go for an hour and a half run, you can. Whereas, if you're going to an office and in that environment, there's nothing wrong with it. But you just have to make sure your training is either done early morning before you leave or, when you get home. So it's just a bit less flexibility. And I guess you technically trade the flexibility for the security, which, is totally fine. There's just nothing wrong with that at all. But I also wanted to just reflect a little bit on where the brand has come over the last year. Shawn comes on full time. Obviously, we'll have spent 1 year with Clay here pretty soon. I think it was winter break when he first started working with the brand. And it's just been insane. I think probably one of our biggest accomplishments this year, and it hasn't even fully come to fruition because the items haven't been released, but is the Saucony shoe deal. That probably warrants an episode in itself, just talking about that experience. And ultimately, here is Shawn, myself, and Clay sitting at the table with all these higher-ups from Saucony, spitballing ideas. It's just surreal to be kind of at that table having those conversations when Clay's still in school. Shawn wasn't even at the brand full time for a year. I had been working on it obviously since the beginning, but it just comes so fast and you just take it in stride. And then to have a brand that's been around for so long, like Saucony, believe in what you're building and want to build with you, it's it's hard to put into words, the excitement that brings to what the future holds, but ultimately you just have to take it year by year, right? I've started to plan out the growth for 2023, and it's if you want to maintain kind of the same growth trajectory, there's a big chasm to kind of traverse. So we'll see. I mean, we have to bring more people on and keep doing the thing. But the problem is I don't know what we need, really. Because I feel, probably get Shawn some help on the customer service stuff and let him start to handle more of the operational side of the business. But then again, to get him up to speed on operations stuff is going to be a pretty large undertaking myself that's going to take me away from other things. So I've been ping-ponging it back and forth in my head, just rip the Band-Aid off and do it, or just maybe put it off till the new year and get through the remaining releases if there are any for the rest of the year. But yeah, I mean, it's 2022 has been a wild ride. I don't know that I've ever been this busy in my life, outside of both in work and outside of work, with all of the content and physical activity stuff that we've gotten involved in.
Yeah. I mean, I think the hardest part about like next year is like, I feel like and we know a bunch of stuff we want and need to do. It's like prioritizing like which one is going to be the most effective. It's like how can you know which
What
one's
you
going to
don't
be the
know.
most? Yeah, it's like you go in on one thing and it's like, oh shit, like that didn't really, that helped us, but I think if we had done this, it would have given us more. So I think that's one of those things where it's like, do you just go for it? Do you talk to a bunch of people and then get some, you can do all the research you want, but at the end of the day, you're going to have to do something, and you just hope that you make the right decision almost. It's just like an educated jump, and
Sometimes it's a gut feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can try to educate it, guess it away, and try to mitigate risk as much as possible. But at the end of the day, you are in business because you took risk. So, I mean, yeah, I think we just make as good of a decision as we can, and then just go full blast into it. And if it fails, then it fails, and figure out what went wrong and recoup, and then go after the next thing. But that's not to say do so recklessly. It's just make the smart, educated moves. I think we had talked probably 2 episodes about needing a bigger warehouse. Do we finally find a 3PL that can handle what we're doing? Do we go with the 3PL because then it operationally frees up a whole lot of my time and Shawn's time? Does the cost basis make sense for a 3PL? I think, that's probably a huge question mark headed into 2023, because, 3PLs are great at freeing up your time to work on other things. They're handling day-to-day shipping, they're handling releases, shipping and stuff. But I also think that, our edge involves shipping, right? Like when you're dealing with a 3PL, and this isn't a blanket statement for all of them, there are some really, really good 3PLs. I spoke to a really, really good 3PL the other day, this guy named Chad. And, he has the ability to do all of the custom packaging stuff that we end up doing with our orders. But a lot of the 3PLs don't, or you get, charged tons of money per order for that stuff. So it's ultimately just weighing, as we continue to scale, like how tough does this become? And if you're doing X number of orders per month, is it even feasible? Like, is at some point Shawn just going to be in the warehouse 8 hours a day packing orders every single day? Like, that's obviously not how I want to have him utilized in the business. So then, you run into the next question of, okay, well, full-time warehouse employee, like, would they be able to handle it? Well, who's, teaching them and showing them how to operate while they're getting up to speed? All of these things, it's like you try to answer one question and then you ultimately just end up with 5, and while you're trying to answer the 5 questions, you end up like spinning yourself in circles and get no answers. So, we'll see. I think since the beginning, I haven't been overly concerned with trying to grow at great breakneck pace. I think steady, strong, and controlled growth is perfectly fine. We're a consumer business. We're not a tech company trying to grow at, we're not trying to 10x every single year. I don't think that would be very smart. Hypergrowth has the propensity to sometimes kill startups. So, we'll moving forward, it's just gonna have to reflect come end of December and into January. regarding the Run Club hoodies, while we're kind of on the topic of end of year, there are a bunch of colors, some restock colors, and then some new colors. New colors being black and maroon that are finished production and on their way to our warehouse. The problem is I don't know when they're going to arrive to the warehouse. They're on a container ship. And so there's the block of time between when they arrive to the Jersey port and then when they are ultimately clear customs dropped at our warehouse. When they're dropped at our warehouse, how fast can we turn around sorting them and be ready for release is my biggest question, because I don't have product photos for the maroon or the black hoodies, so I'd have to get those. Generally, product photos turn around in like 8 or 9 days. So is it even feasible to pull off a release before the holiday season? I don't know. The fact that it's already December 7th makes me think that it's not going to be possible and that it's going to have to be early January. And I apologize because I know people obviously buy them as gifts and all that stuff. I don't think we're going to be able to turn it around fast enough. I mean, the headache that would cause, plus, the potential for error is probably too much.
Yeah, I think, like, just based on all of the shipments we've gotten in the past, it's like it's hard to even think about, because until they are at the warehouse or like there's a truck backing into the loading dock with the product right in front of my eyes, it's like, who knows how many delays it could hit? Who knows, like, what's going to hold up customs? Like, is the port issue? Like, it's hard to tell. And it's like, it's already December 6th and 7th. And I don't know. It's like one of those things where it's like, we want to be able to give a date, but like, there's also on our end, like, we don't know that much other than that they're on the way.
Yeah, once it's on a boat, which is where it is now, you kind of don't have visibility into where this boat is in the ocean and when it's supposed to arrive in port. You can get the estimate from the freight forwarder, the shipper, of like when the boat's going to get into port, but I mean, as we saw last time we brought in the Run Club hoodies, I mean, those sat off the port of Los Angeles for like 4 weeks. Obviously, that was the height of COVID, and things have calmed down in like shipping congestion. But yeah, I have learned my lesson in talking about potential release dates before the products are officially in the warehouse and sorted, counted, because I think it causes too much confusion when I try to say, we're going to try to release before, say, Christmas. And then it doesn't clear customs for 3 or 4 days when it's supposed to take 1. There's a delay with the boat, so it comes in 2 days later. There's 4 or 5 days delay already. You only have, 4 weeks in a month. So we're a month in, and we don't even have the products into the port yet. So probably, January sometime, mid to late January, but don't hold me to it. That's best case.
It's like, yeah, at the end of the day, we want to be as realistic as possible with you guys. Like, it'd be easy for us to be like, oh, they're on the way. Like, it should be any day now. But, I know, especially during the holidays, it's like if somebody's waiting to buy a hoodie and then the hoodie doesn't show up before the holidays, like, you kind of screw that person over. So it's like, this is the information, all of the information we have, like, do with that as you please. We're not guaranteeing that they're going to be here before a certain date because, as seen in the past, you can never know until they're literally in our hands.
Yeah. I think that probably wraps up this episode.
We're doing a 5K this weekend.
We are running a 5K this weekend. It's called the Frosty
5K.
In Prospect Park, Brooklyn. I mean, shit, I don't even know what to expect out of myself anymore. My runs have felt laborsome. I don't feel very fast. But I've still been running, trying to get my mileage in. So I'll say it now. If I run anywhere from 16:59 to 17:05, I'll be happy.
It's ambitious.
Why?
You know, I mean, more power to you. I was saying anywhere in the 17s, I'll be happy.
What do you mean?
I don't know. Just that's a lofty goal.
What do you mean anywhere in the 17s? That could be like 17:59.
Yeah, anywhere in the 17s. You got to learn not to put pressure on yourself. We
No,
haven't done
no.
well under pressure.
No, I think I think you'll run 17:05 or something.
No, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, it's a whole new training block, and
What
I'm
Shawn
not a
and I were
5K
talking
runner.
about is like, what I was saying is in the 5K, it's what 3 point something miles. Like, if you blow yourself up on mile 1, you just gotta like just get through 2 more miles, which obviously easier said than done. But my plan is to go out moderately fast, mile 1. Chill on mile 2, not slow, but like not sprinting, and then just crank it up mile 3, see what happens. Yeah, Shawn will be probably right next to me the whole time.
There's a hill on mile 2. Got to keep that in mind. I don't know. We'll see. We'll have an update for you.
We'll have an update next time we are on the podcast. We'll have an update plus any other updates. I don't think so. It'll be coming into the year end, I guess. I think the last week of December.
We might not even be here in 2 weeks.
Yeah, we'll figure something out. Anyway, thank you all for tuning in. We will be back in, I think, 2 weeks. That's what we'll shoot for, every 2 weeks. Take care.